I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and went all through school there, and went to college there, and I hated the winter. So as soon as I graduated from college, my friend and I moved to Miami. And at the time, that wasn't done. At that time, women did not leave home until they got married. And so we were like the talk of the town, so to speak. Our parents thought we were crazy, and I look back at it now and I think I have no idea where I got the guts to do it. But we just came down here in the middle of the winter and fell in love with it, and went down to we were teachers, so we went down to the school board and said, we'd like a job here. And they said, okay, here, fill out this little application. It was like a half a page application. And so we filled it out. They gave us jobs, and we went home and told our families. And
What was the reaction?
oh, our mothers were horrified. Horrified. We went together. First, we went to her mother, because her mother was a little more liberal than my mother. She was a school principal, and she worked, and she had 6 kids, and she still worked, and so she was a little more liberal than my mother. But still, it was our parents, except for my father, everybody was horrified. My father thought it was great, because he always wanted to live in Florida. And so the fact that I was doing what he always wanted to go to college, and he never was able to, so he was thrilled that I was able to go to college. And he always wanted to live in Florida, so he was thrilled that I was moving to Florida. My mother was horrified. Girls just don't pick up and go live by themselves on their own, but we did.
And where's your friend now?
She passed away last August.
Oh,
Yeah, so she was very ill. We were friends for over 50 years. So we've been through a lot of ups and downs together. But she was very ill, so it was, it was time for her. But yeah, we just picked up and moved down here.
so where did you work?
I worked at an elementary school in a 6th grade, teaching 6th grade in North Miami, which is now Miami Gardens, but at the time it was a different type of area. But and she worked nearby, and we rented an apartment and lived together, and that's how I met my husband, because he was a teacher also. So that's how we met.
And what year did you get married?
It's 1966.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then our first child was born in 67, and I stayed home. I was able to, it was really great, because at that time, and all my friends stayed home too, so at that time it was, things were different, and we were able to stay home with our kids. And then 17 months later we had another daughter. And so it was great. I loved staying home with the kids.
And did you continue living in North Miami?
No. We moved to South Miami. We've been living in the same house since a year after we got married. We're still living in the same house.
And was your husband teaching in that area?
Yes. He drove. It was quite a drive at the time, but the Palmetto Expressway wasn't what it is today. It was,
Yeah, of course.
traffic wasn't so bad as it is now. And yeah, and then he moved around from different schools, because then he became an administrator, and so he was principal of different assistant principal and principal of different schools.
And at that point, you had 2 daughters.
Yeah, we had 2 daughters, and we had always, for some reason, which I look back on, I don't know why, but the 2 of us had always talked about adopting a child. And so when our youngest daughter was 2, we decided to see about adopting a child. So we did. We went to Catholic Charities. That was at the time. That's where you went for. Well, it wasn't called. It was called Catholic Service Bureau, I think, or something like that. And so we went through all the paperwork and the interviews and all of that. And then we just waited and waited, and then all of a sudden one day we got a phone call. And at the time, you got a phone call and you either said yes or no. They gave you 1 hour to say yes or no. And we were on our way out the door to the funeral of our good friend's father over in Miami Beach. The funeral was over in Miami Beach. He was also our attorney. And so I asked her if we could have 2 hours because we were going to the funeral. You know, we wanted to talk to him as him being our attorney. And so he called and got all the information at the, on the same afternoon of his father's funeral. And so we said yes, and we got a baby boy, 8 months old. And
how was that? Did you go pick him up?
Yeah, we went and picked him up. We went down to I forget where it was, but I think maybe it was where the cathedral is in Miami Shores. Is that where it is? In Miami Shores? And I can't even remember where we went, but we were talking about it this morning. We remember bringing him home. And of course, at the time, I know this is hard for people to believe who are younger than I am, but we didn't have car seats. You just put your baby in the car. And, if it was an infant, you laid it on the seat, and if you could sit in your lap, or otherwise they sat in the back seat, or if you had a station wagon, they roamed around in the back. And so I just held him on my lap on the way home. No, we didn't have seatbelts or anything we had this big station wagon, and we remember holding him on our, me holding him on our lap and bringing him home, introducing him to our girls. And, at the time, in our ignorance at the time, we thought, well, you could just love this baby and everything would be fine. If you love them enough, they'll be fine. But he was with one foster family for 8 months. He was the mother at birth. She never saw him. She gave him up for adoption before he was born. So the Catholic Service Bureau took him and placed him with a foster family. And, just when he was a couple of days old. And we even changed his name because we didn't even know, at the time, we didn't know what his name was, because at the time, everything was kept a secret. You found out nothing. You didn't find out who the parents' names were. You got a birth certificate. And the birth certificate was completed after your adoption was finalized by the court, and your name was put in to the birth certificate, the adoptive parents. So you know nothing. They didn't know who the biological father was. So that was the reason for the 8 months delay of putting him up for adoption, because they were trying to find out who the biological father was. Well, the mother had no idea who the biological father was, so why they waited 8 months to find this out, we had no idea. But
how would it be done today, do you think, differently?
Well, today, if a child was in foster care for 8 months, for whatever reason, I mean, it could be because the child was taken away from the parents because they were drug addicted or for whatever reason, then there's a process now of integrating the child into the new home, meeting the adoptive parents with the foster parents, and little by little introducing them, in a neutral setting before he or she is taken, and the name would never be changed, because we found out later that they called him William, but we had no idea when we got him what his name was. They never told us anything. We knew nothing about the biological mother and her health issues or anything like that. Now, you find out all kinds of things, you know, if you find out family genetic history and so on and so forth. So you would know, for example, if your child was, your adoptive child might be prone to diabetes or arthritis or, you know, anything. If it's a, you know, family trait that, heart disease, any of these things. But we found out nothing, absolutely nothing. The paper, I still have it someplace, was like one paragraph. And it was so vague that that he was born in a hospital in Naples, and that was all. That was basically.
Did you have to
it.
sign, or did you have to promise that you would not try to find the
No,
biological parents
no.
later on?
I went at the. I can't remember where it was. It might have been at the when we went to the court for the final adoption, and it was just in a judge's chambers. And the person, I think this is how I did what I did, but the person who was there from Catholic Services had the folder, and I looked at it, and I saw what the mother's last name was. So I stored that away in my memory. I never even told my husband that I had seen it. Because when our son got older, I offered to help him find her if he so chose. But no, there's never, you know, there was never anything that had to be signed or anything like that. But you know, we gave him the name that we wanted to give him, and so you can only imagine the changes in this little baby's life of being taken away from the only family he knew. No matter how well or not well they took care of him, it was still, that doesn't matter to an infant. It's still their frame of reference. It's still their,
That's right.
you know, their reality. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, one day he's picked up, taken away, and given to these other people who he's never seen before. So, you know, as an infant, he had difficulty falling asleep, you know, and I've learned since then, because, you know, at that time, in 1971, when this was, well, actually it was in 72, he was born in 71, it was in June of 72, and but people didn't know things about adoption, and they didn't know things about attachment disorders and any of these kinds of things. So, you know, since then I've learned a tremendous amount. And one of the things I learned that these babies should be held all the time. And held all day. If you have to hold them all day, you hold them all day until they're, because that's one way of them feeling safe. And of course, you know, in those days, well, we had 2 other kids, and you know, we had little play yards and play pens and porta cribs and all that stuff, and the babies played in there with their myriad of toys, and you know, they were never lacking. There was never a time of lacking for noise and commotion around our house, but still, you know, you just expected. The expectation was that this child was going to behave like your other kids,